good to see all of you. And I'm Reverend Tim Lytle, Senior Minister here, if we haven't met yet. And those of you I haven't met yet, I hope to meet you at the end of the service. You can come up to the front of the line so that we can connect. Today, I'm looking at all of us being on the journey. We're on the journey. And one of the scriptures that I'm looking at is the Israelites, when they were called out of Egypt. They were enslaved people, and they were brought out of Egypt, and they were on their way to the promised land. But a funny thing happened on the way to the promised land. It took 40 years for them to get into the promised land. And during that time, there were several lessons that occurred that I want to bring up for us today. But first of all, I want to bring up a Hawaiian word, and I believe we have a slide for that. And that Hawaiian word is kako. Kako. Can we say that together? Kako. And what kako means is all of us. We are all in this together. Every single one of us. So it includes everybody. Now, in Hawaiian culture, there was a time where this didn't need to be talked about. It was just understood. It was just the way it was. It was just the culture, that it's all of us, that we're all in this together. But with the coming of Western culture, with its emphasis on independence and standing on our own, whether it be economically or socially, people became more and more isolated. So it became more and more important to speak to this concept of kako, which is about all of us being in this together. Now, this story that you can find in the Hebrew scriptures, such as in Exodus, where the Israelites make their exodus from Egypt and they're on their way to the promised land. This passage of scripture many times is used to describe our journey through the wilderness individually. Like individually, when I'm in a time of wilderness, a time of searching, a time of figuring out my life, such as in the excellent book written by Dr. Robert Brummett, a Unity professor, Finding Yourself in Transition. It is not just finding that you are in transition, but finding yourself in transition, that it's actually a very spiritual process. So many times, the wilderness experience of the scriptures is referred to in messages as our own individual journey of finding who we are, finding our connection with the one power, the one presence that we call God. What I haven't heard, and I was reflecting on this, and it's like, did I miss it? Did I fall asleep at that part? Was I talking with friends? Was I distracted? What I've missed hearing in messages about the wilderness is that it was a group, a community of people who were in the wilderness together. Often, I hear it described as our own individual wilderness. But in the Hebrew scriptures, they were in community, and they were for 40 years in the wilderness. Spiritual communities sometimes go through ups and downs, with the comings and goings of ministers, with the comings and goings of different eras, with the comings and goings of different people. And we all have our individual journey in that, but we're all traveling it together. What we are creating here is the beloved community. And what I mean by that is that we are really here for each other, And we are here to help create a world that works for everyone. So the Israelites who are wandering for 40 years, can you imagine wandering for 40 years? Would you at that point say, I think it's time that we take a ministerial vote? Maybe elect new leaders. Maybe get a better map. 40 years of wandering in the wilderness. Now, in Scripture, 40 represents a number of completion. In the Hebrew and Christian scriptures, 40 is used to mean, a really long time till it's complete, till it's finished. So in Matthew chapter 4, Jesus is called into the wilderness before he begins his public ministry, and he's there for 40 days and 40 nights. When there was a great flood in the Hebrew scriptures, it talks about Noah and the flood. This deluge of rain lasted for 40 days and 40 nights. It's representative of this completion, this time of completion. So I want to look at those concepts of kako and journeying together in the wilderness. And so there's going to be 4 A's I'm going to talk about. First of all, A-L-L, all. All of us are in this together. We're all in this journey together. All of us are in this boat together. Now, Marcia, who is one of our new community members, we're going to have several community members that will be introduced to you, I hope, next Sunday. We'll see how this all works out. But Marcia is in surgery right now. Marcia loves to ride bikes. She's an actor and she's a best-selling author. And I just read one of her books and it's phenomenal. Several times I was just weeping. And Marcia was riding her bike yesterday, fell off her bike, fractured the top of her femur that goes into her hip. And so please, and she asked, when I called them on the phone. They were in the hospital, her husband, Dennis. They're here every Sunday. Typically sit just a little bit behind where you're sitting, Linda. And Dennis answered the phone and we connected. And I said, is it okay if I tell the community, for prayer, is it okay that I tell the community what has happened? And Marcia, who is a fireball, answered up in the background. Okay, her hip's broken. She's waiting for surgery. But I hear her in the background. Yes, tell the community. The more people who are praying, the better. Yes. Right? We're community. We're in this together. Now, we don't always do it perfectly. If you're looking for perfection, I suggest don't have anything to do with human beings. I have sometimes heard people talking about churches and things aren't perfect and so forth and so on. Anytime you have human beings, it's not going to be perfect. And yet we are perfect. We're perfect in our imperfection. We're perfect in the sense that we are all the presence, the love, the outpicturing of God. And we're also all developing. We're all growing. We're all cleaning up. We're all moving in to our highest and best expression of being the Christ, the one that we are. So we're both. We're a paradox. We're perfect, and yet we're growing, okay? So If you've ever encountered something in a spiritual community or this spiritual community that seemed less than perfection, maybe rejection, or maybe you heard gossip, or maybe you heard, I don't know, murmuring, complaining, please forgive us for those times where we were living out of our shadow side. Those of you who've taken the quantum living process know that we identify our shadow side, those aspects of ourselves that hold us back from fully expressing what we're really here to be. And we all have a shadow side. And communities have shadow sides. Countries have shadow sides. So, when we bring the shadow out into the light of day, then it can be healed. Then it can be worked with. You don't heal the shadow by pressing it down and pretending that it isn't there. So as we identify the shadow side, we then identify those areas where we're moving out of those areas, and we're moving into what's called the Q side of the card, the quantum side of the card. This is who we're really here to be. We're really here to be the one. We're really here to be creative, collaborative, loving. We're really here to be the presence of God in the world. So, the Israelites, as they're wandering in the wilderness for 40 years, can you imagine that sometimes they started complaining? What? How could that happen? They had Moses as their leader, and they had all these wonderful people, and they're out of this enslaved situation in Egypt, and yet they're complaining and they're murmuring. They're murmuring about, we got the same thing to eat every day. They're complaining about, we keep wandering around, you know. I mean, if you read the book of Exodus, it reads like a series of complaints. And Moses at times gets impatient. So, you know, it's nothing new for spiritual communities to sometimes face their shadow side. And yet we're all in this together. All of us. We're all on this journey together. My wife and I traveled to the Midwest. We were in Wichita, Kansas, and we were in Kansas City, Missouri, and Unity Village. And I was there for 2.5 weeks, and she stayed for about an extra 2.5 weeks. And I did not set this intention. I did not say, okay, I'm going to set my alarm clock when she's flying and when she's doing this and blah, blah, blah. But I'm her travel agent, okay? So I knew that she was going to be flying in to SFO, San Francisco International Airport, at about 11:26 on the night of February 21st, Tuesday night. I had this all figured out. And I knew that there was going to be a layover, because I've done this too, a layover until one gets in line at 5 in the morning for the next flight. And because it's involving 2 different airlines that you got to pick up luggage in between. And so you got to find a place to be all night. And there's a restaurant where we find benches, and anyway. So we got this whole routine worked out. So I wake up at 2:40 in the morning, our time. I'm thinking, okay, what time is it for Ogalusia? It's 4:40 her time. It's time to get in line. Now, I did not set a clock. I didn't intentionally go, oh, I got to do this. I'm on the journey. I'm on the journey with her. So I text her and I say, it's time to get in line. It just so happened at that moment that a security guard that I've gotten to know at SFO was saying, what do you mean you don't know your reservation number? So she contacts me and she says, what's my reservation number, my confirmation number? So I send that to her. And it's like I'm on this journey with her. I can feel my hands on the metal cart where the luggage is. I can hear the voice of the security guard that I know. I know exactly the aisle that she's at for Hawaiian Airlines. I can see it, I can feel it, the whole thing. So I'm on the journey with her. Even though it was her own individual journey, I was on the journey with her. In the same way, we're all on our own individual journeys here, but we're all on the journey together. We're supporting each other. We're listening to each other. We're being the Christ with one another. We are in that presence of prayer with one another. So, we are all in this together. Ka-ko. Secondly, one of the things that's really important in spiritual community is to appreciate. The Hebrew people, as they were wandering in the wilderness, had forgotten about appreciation, and they had gone into complaining. If you find yourself going into complaining, you are moving out of appreciation. In the book, The 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership, which I highly recommend, the 6th commitment is about integrity. The 7th commitment is about appreciation. And in these commitments, we talk about being above the line and below the line. You all know about below the line, right? That's when it comes to appreciation, instead of appreciation, we're grumbling, we're complaining, we're whining. Have you ever found yourself whining? Why can't things be better? Why can't we do things differently? Why? So, when we find ourselves whining and complaining, we've moved below the line. Above the line is appreciation. Appreciation for all of life. There's so much to appreciate here. Every day, I am looking at all the plants here. I'm just in such appreciation. I'm hearing the birds. I'm even appreciative of the roosters in our neighborhood that wake up at 2 a.m. I just have this appreciation for all of life.
They're on your journey.
They're on my journey. We're all part of the same journey. So appreciation, I find to be a much more creative, energizing, enlivening experience than to be complaining. Appreciation of others, genuine appreciation, not faux appreciation where we're trying to manipulate someone to do what we want. And have you found some people who have difficulty receiving appreciation because they wonder, what is it you want? I remember saying, and Mom, I know you're watching. This is just, I can remember saying something nice to my mom when I was a kid, and she said, "What do you want?" And I have to admit, I was trying to manipulate a situation, you know? So we begin, well, what's their ulterior motive, you know? Well, genuine appreciation isn't about trying to manipulate or control. It's about genuinely, authentically sharing with someone, like we did with someone this morning. You have such a beautiful voice. Or sharing with someone something that we appreciate about them. Not to get something from them, but because we're living in appreciation. And when we're able to do that, we get into a position where we're able to accept it. Who here has difficulty accepting appreciation? When someone gives you a compliment, you might think, are they trying to manipulate me? Or you might think, if they really knew me, they wouldn't be saying this. Or, if I accept this, does this mean I'm not being humble? Or, you know, people have sometimes resistance. And occasionally, I will say to people, can you just receive it? I'm giving you a gift. Can you accept the gift? I mean, if someone gives you a gift, you go, oh, I don't deserve it. Oh, I don't want it. Oh. I mean, sometimes we go, oh, you shouldn't have, but yeah, please. Please. Oh, yeah, what is it? Why not just accept appreciation? And so part of being in spiritual community is about appreciation. Another part of being in spiritual community, and this included those folks wandering in the wilderness. Okay, so first, all of us are in this together. Secondly, appreciation. Thirdly, accountability. What can we count on each other for? Having clear agreements, and this is the 7th commitment in the 15 commitments. Integrity. Making good agreements, keeping our agreements. If we find that we're having difficulty keeping the agreement, then renegotiating the agreement. And if we broke the agreement, finding a way to make it whole. So, meaning what we say and following through on it, keeping our agreements. What can we count on each other for? Being in beloved community is very much about what is it that we can count on each other for? How do we support one another in this beloved community? Do we keep our agreements? Do we support our ministry in sacred service, in giving, in our prayers? Do we support our sacred community? So, accountability. And let me jump to the 4th one, because this could be a weekend workshop, actually. But the 4th one is action. So first, we're all in this together. Secondly, appreciation. 3rd one is accountability. 4th one is action. What is it that we're called to do in the world? How are we called to show up here? Yesterday, we had a training session with new volunteers who are going to be teaching and leading our children's ministry. It was such a beautiful convergence of talents. I'm talking about one of them has 25 years of professional experience as a teacher. The other one has 10 years experience of working with children and youth and adults in mental health services and services in the community. Another one who is going to be filling in at times and, has years of experience as a Montessori teacher. It's like highly qualified, not just educated people, but people of high emotional and spiritual intelligence. And when they heard our announcement where we're calling for people to help us in our children's ministry, their heart immediately said yes. They relayed that to us yesterday. Immediately they said yes. They didn't even question it. They knew it was theirs to do. And they're excited and they're pumped up and they're collaborating. And, we were there to do training, but after a while, one of the people there said, I think we need to just get out of the way and let them do what they need to do. I mean, they are fired up. That's the difference between sacred service and volunteering. No, we believe in volunteering, but sacred service is when we're really engaging ourselves, when we're really putting ourselves into sacred action in the beloved community, when we're really saying yes and committing. Now, for 5.5 years in my life, I've had different episodes, phases in my life. For 5.5 years in my life, I was weekly studying in what in Wichita was called the Hebraic College of Judaism. So weekly I was studying the Torah and I was weekly studying Kabbalah. They had a rabbi there who was an author who had authored numerous books on Kabbalah, and I took every class he had in Kabbalah. And I just soaked it up like a sponge. This was his assessment. He said, the Jewish people were called to be a light to the nations. The Hebrew scriptures say this. They were called to be a light to the nations. They were called to be a light to the Gentiles. And yet, my rabbi mentor said, many times what happened is instead they got focused on themselves instead of being a light to the world. One term you might use for that is spiritual narcissism. It's important for us to do the inward journey, like on a labyrinth. If you've ever walked a labyrinth, you go into the labyrinth to do your inner work, but then you exit the labyrinth to be a spiritual presence in the world. We are here to do the inner work of working on our shadow and understanding who it is we're here to be, and we are here to be a transforming presence in the world. We're here to inspire others to make a positive difference in our world. So as I looked at these people who signed up for sacred service to work with our keiki, I thought, wow, they are making a positive difference in our world. We are all called to do that. We are all called to be the beloved community. Today, we're going to have the town hall meeting. We will hear from 3 of our board candidates, excellent candidates. And then next Sunday, following the service, we will have our annual meeting. It's a time of celebrating the great accomplishments that we have done as a community. It is a time for celebrating the journey that we are on and the steps that we are taking for our future. It is a time for celebrating our leadership, our board, and other leaders in the community. And it is a time of us meeting together as the beloved community to celebrate who we are. We're all in this together. We all appreciate each other. We hold each other accountable so that we know what we can count on each other for, and we all spring into action to be a transformative presence in our world. Thank you.